It is said that the Roman Empire was closer to the invention of the iPhone than the construction of the pyramids in Egypt. This staggering comparison illustrates how our perception of historical time often fails to grasp the vast distances between civilizations. Similarly, in the digital realm, we experience a peculiar compression and expansion of time. The Windows 95 operating system, now an artifact of digital antiquity, was released less than 30 years ago, yet feels simultaneously recent in memory and impossibly distant in technological capability. This temporal contradiction is at the heart of what I'm calling digital obsolescence aesthetics, the peculiar beauty and melancholy that emerges from technologies that have fallen out of use but remain within our cultural memory. We experience a form of technological hauntology, where the past neither fully disappears nor remains accessible. This paradox creates a unique emotional response, nostalgic yearning combined with an awareness of our accelerating technological metabolism. Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am your host, The Ghost with the Most, and on my channel I do analytical storytelling. If you like what you're watching, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers. Enjoy the video, and thank you for being here. Today, we'll explore the nostalgic landscape together, examining how obsolete technologies continue to haunt our collective imagination. From the chirping dial-up sounds of early internet connections to the pixelated graphics of first-generation 3D games, these digital ghosts reveal not just how far we've come, but something deeper about our relationship with technology itself. Let's begin by exploring the conceptual framework that underpins the aesthetics of digital obsolescence. Mark Fisher's concept of hauntology provides a powerful lens through which to view abandoned digital spaces. These digital ruins, from GeoCities neighborhoods to MySpace profiles, exist in a liminal state between presence and absence. When we encounter screenshots of GeoCity pages with their animated GIFs and under construction banners, we're not merely seeing outdated design choices, we're witnessing the ghosts of a more optimistic internet era, one characterized by amateur creativity rather than algorithmic curation. This leads us to the temporal dissonance created by obsolete digital media. Unlike physical artifacts that show their age through material decay, digital objects can remain pristine, yet become functionally inaccessible. A Flash animation from 2005 might be perfectly preserved as code, yet increasingly difficult to actually experience as intended. This creates a unique form of nostalgia, not for things lost to time, but for things still technically present yet practically unreachable. Digital mortality manifests through various forms of decay: link rot that turns the web into a landscape of broken connections, format obsolescence that renders files unreadable, and storage media degradation that corrupts data. Despite the promise of perfect digital copying, our digital legacy proves surprisingly fragile. A Word document from 1995 may be as inaccessible today as a medieval manuscript, despite being created within living memory. This contradiction challenges the utopian narratives of perfect digital preservation and forces us to confront the ephemeral nature of our digital creations. What makes this conceptual framework particularly powerful is how it connects technological change to deeper philosophical questions about memory, permanence, and legacy. When we stumble across a corrupted JPEG image or attempt to run software on an incompatible system, we're experiencing not just technological friction, but a tangible reminder of our own transience. The conceptual framework of digital obsolescence helps us understand that our digital artifacts are not immune to the passage of time. Instead, they experience a unique form of temporal existence, simultaneously preserved yet inaccessible, present yet dysfunctional. This contradiction forms the knowledge for an aesthetic that finds beauty in technological impermanence, acknowledging that even our most cutting-edge digital creations will eventually join the graveyard of obsolete media, even this very video you are watching right now. By recognizing this digital mortality, we can develop a more nuanced relationship with technology, one that values the ephemeral nature of digital experiences rather than clinging to the myth of perfect preservation. The aesthetic language of digital obsolescence encompasses a rich visual vocabulary that has evolved from technological limitation to deliberate stylistic choice. Let's explore these visual elements in depth. Degradation aesthetics represent perhaps the most distinctive visual signature of digital obsolescence. What were once considered errors or technical failures, compression artifacts, pixelation, glitches, and data corruption, have been reclaimed as deliberate artistic choices. Artists and designers intentionally introduce these imperfections to evoke nostalgia or comment on technological impermanence. The data moshing technique, which deliberately corrupts video codecs to create surreal flowing imagery, transforms digital decay into hypnotic visual poetry. Similarly, the VHS aesthetic, with its tracking lines and color distortion, has been repurposed in modern video filters, celebrating rather than hiding the medium's inherent instability. Interface archaeology reveals how UI/UX designs of earlier digital eras have become cultural artifacts in their own right. The skeuomorphic designs of early operating systems, with their faux leather textures and paper notepad simulations attempted to make the digital world familiar by mimicking physical objects. Today, these design choices appear charmingly naive, yet they capture a transitional moment when users were still learning to navigate digital spaces. Winamp skins, with their metallic finishes and science fiction inspirations, tell us more about the aesthetic values of late 90s digital culture than many formal design histories. Even the humble cursor, evolving from a blinking command line to graphical pointer to today's minimalist indicators, charts changing assumptions about how humans should interact with machines. Format fetishism manifests in the deliberate use of technologically obsolete formats for their distinctive aesthetic qualities. Low-poly 3D models with their angular features and limited textures have been embraced by indie game developers, not due to technical limitations, but for their distinctive visual charm. MIDI files, or MIDI files, despite their technological inferiority to modern audio formats, continue to be created for their distinctive synthetic timbre. ASCII art persists not because of text-only limitations, but because of its distinctive visual language that combines minimalism with technical virtuosity. In each case, artists and creators are choosing these obsolete formats not despite their limitations, but because of them, finding aesthetic value in their constraints. What makes these visual elements particularly compelling is how they transition from technological necessity to aesthetic choice. Early digital creators used pixelated graphics because that's all technology could support. Today's creators use them deliberately to invoke emotion or commentary. This transformation represents a maturation of digital aesthetics, a recognition that technological progress isn't always linear, and that older visual languages can carry powerful expressive potential. The visual and aesthetic elements of digital obsolescence have evolved from mere technical artifacts to a rich vocabulary for artistic expression. By embracing the distinctive visual signatures of earlier digital eras, from degradation effects to interface designs to format-specific aesthetics, contemporary creators acknowledge that digital culture has developed enough history to have its own vintage styles. These aesthetic choices remind us that even as technology races forward, the visual languages of earlier eras continue to resonate, carrying emotional associations and cultural memories that newer technologies cannot easily replicate. To better understand the impact and evolution of digital obsolescence aesthetics, let's examine several key case studies that demonstrate these principles in action. Vaporwave and the Y2K aesthetic revival. Perhaps no artistic movement embodies the aesthetic of digital obsolescence more completely than Vaporwave. Emerging in the early 2010s, Vaporwave deliberately appropriates visual elements from the 1990s and early 2000s digital landscape, Windows 95 interfaces, early CGI, and corporate stock photography, and repurposes them through distortion and decontextualization. The genre's visual identity features Greco-Roman salutes. Wow. Features The genre's visual identity features What? The genre's visual identity features Greco-Roman statues juxtaposed with glitched interfaces and corporate logos, all bathed in neon pinks and blues. What makes Vaporwave particularly interesting is how it transformed the mundane digital ephemera of yesterday, elevator music, startup sounds, error messages, into objects of nostalgic contemplation. Artists like Macintosh Plus and James Ferrero deliberately downgrade and manipulate these artifacts, creating a dreamlike atmosphere that's simultaneously familiar and alien. This aesthetic has since evolved into the broader Y2K revival trend, where the optimistic digital aesthetics of the millennium, with its chrome interfaces, translucent plastics, and cyberfuturism, are being reclaimed by a generation too young to have experienced them firsthand. The lost media phenomenon represents a fascinating intersection between digital obsolescence and collective memory. Online communities dedicated to finding supposedly lost digital content, from unaired TV pilots to discontinued video games, reflect growing anxieties about digital impermanence. These communities operate as digital archaeologists, piecing together fragments of media history that have fallen through the cracks of preservation efforts. The psychological appeal of these communities reveals something profound about our relationship with digital artifacts. Unlike physical objects that gradually decay, digital content tends to vanish suddenly and completely when platforms shut down or formats become unreadable. The emotional response to this abrupt disappearance drives intense efforts to recover and preserve these materials, even when their original cultural significance was minimal. The lost media aesthetic often includes VHS recordings, low-resolution screenshots, and fragmentary documentation, all carrying an aura of authenticity precisely because of their degraded quality. While not strictly an aesthetic movement, the Internet Archive represents an institutional response to digital obsolescence that has developed its own distinctive visual identity. The Wayback Machine interface, which allows users to travel backwards through a site history, creates a unique temporal experience where one can witness the evolution or dissolution of digital spaces over time. What's particularly fascinating about the archive is how it has inadvertently created a museum of digital design evolution. Browsing through captured versions of major websites reveals not just changing content, but evolving assumptions about digital interfaces. From the cluttered, text-heavy designs of the early web to the minimalist, mobile-optimized layouts of today, the archive's preservation efforts extend beyond websites to software, allowing users to emulate obsolete programs directly in their browsers. This creates a peculiar experience where obsolete digital environments become accessible within contemporary ones, a kind of technological nesting doll that collapses historical distance. The indie game movement has extensively embraced the aesthetics of digital obsolescence, with many developers deliberately adopting styles associated with earlier gaming eras. Games like Shovel Knight meticulously recreate the technical constraints of NES-era games, while titles like Hypnospace Outlaw simulate the experience of browsing a fictional late 90s internet, complete with period-appropriate design elements. What distinguishes these works from simple nostalgia is their self-awareness about the aesthetic choices they're making. They don't merely mimic older visual styles, but comment on them, often incorporating metatextual elements that acknowledge the artificial nature of their obsolete appearance. This approach transforms technical limitations into deliberate aesthetic frameworks, finding beauty and expressive potential in constraints that were originally seen as obstacles to overcome. These case studies demonstrate how digital obsolescence has evolved from a technical problem into a rich aesthetic tradition with its own visual language, emotional resonance, and cultural significance. By embracing rather than reject the distinctive qualities of obsolete digital forms, creators across different media have developed new modes of expression that speak to our complex relationship with technological change. The aesthetics of digital obsolescence raise profound philosophical questions about our relationship with technology, time, and memory. Let's examine these implications in greater depth. First, digital obsolescence challenges our assumptions about technological progress. The conventional narrative presents technological development as an unambiguous forward march, each innovation improving upon the last. Yet the persistence and revival of obsolete digital aesthetics suggest a more complex relationship with our technological past. We frequently find ourselves drawn to older technologies, not despite but because of their limitations. This nostalgic return reveals a subtle critique of the relentless pursuit of optimization that drives tech development, suggesting that something valuable is lost in each transition to the supposedly superior. Second, our relationship with obsolete digital media exposes tensions in how we experience temporality in digital environments. Digital spaces promise to transcend time, creating permanent, unchanging records. Yet paradoxically, digital artifacts often prove more ephemeral than their physical counterparts. A century-old book remains readable, while a document created 20 years ago on an obsolete software becomes inaccessible. This contradiction forces us to confront what philosopher Bernard Stiegler termed tertiary retention, the externalization of memory into technological systems. As these systems become obsolete, we face a prospect of a peculiar kind of cultural amnesia, where our recent past becomes less accessible than our distant history. Third, digital obsolescence raises existential questions about authenticity and simulation. When we experience obsolete digital media, whether through immolation, preservation, or artistic recreation, we encounter a simulation of the original experience rather than the experience itself. A website viewed through the Wayback Machine or a video game played through an emulator lacks the original technical context and cultural situation. This creates a philosophical hall of mirrors where nostalgia itself becomes mediated through layers of simulation, raising questions about whether authentic experience is even possible in digital environments. Fourth, the aesthetics of digital obsolescence reveal our complex relationship with impermanence. The deliberate embrace of glitches, degradation, and obsolete formats constitutes a form of digital memento mori, reminders of technological mortality that parallel our own. In an era where transhumanist narratives promise to overcome human limitations through technology, these aesthetics serve as counter-narratives, emphasizing that digital systems remain subject to entropy, decay, and death. The beautiful melancholy of vaporwave or the poignancy of corrupted file speaks to a deeper truth, that impermanence defines not just organic existence, but technological existence as well. Finally, digital obsolescence provokes questions about ownership and control. As formats become obsolete and platforms shut down, users lose access to content they ostensibly owned. This phenomenon exposes the illusory nature of digital ownership in an era of perpetual licensing and digital rights management. The corporations that control access to our digital past exercise unprecedented power over cultural memory, determining what persists and what vanishes. The aestheticization of digital obsolescence thus contains a political dimension, a reclamation of our agency over technologies designed for planned obsolescence and corporate control. In conclusion, the philosophical implications of digital obsolescence extend far beyond technical considerations into questions of memory, authenticity, temporality, morality, and power. By embracing rather than rejecting obsolete digital forms, we create space for deeper reflection on our technological condition, acknowledging both the wonder and melancholy of living in an era where our means of cultural expression constantly shift beneath our feet. The aesthetics of digital obsolescence don't merely commemorate what has been lost, but reminds us to question the values embedded in our pursuits of the perpetually new. Throughout this exploration of digital obsolescence aesthetics, we've traversed a landscape where technological decay transforms into artistic expression. What began as technical limitations and failures have evolved into a rich vocabulary for creative commentary on our digital existence. The visual languages of earlier digital eras, from pixelated graphics and compression artifacts to skeuomorphic interfaces and obsolete file formats, now serve as powerful tools for artistic expression precisely because they carry emotional and cultural resonance that newer technologies cannot replicate. That our relationship with technology is not simply about function, but about feeling, memory, and meaning. As we've seen through movements like Vaporwave, lost media communities, digital preservation efforts, and retro gaming revivals, the deliberate embrace of obsolete digital forms represent more than mere nostalgia. It constitutes a philosophical stance, one that questions the assumption that newer is always better and acknowledges the poignancy of technological impermanence. In a world obsessed with the cutting edge, there is profound value in looking backward, in finding beauty in the digital ruins of yesterday, like digital urban exploration. The aesthetics of digital obsolescence offers us a moment to pause amid relentless innovation and consider what we gain and lose with each technological transition. They transform our digital past from something merely outdated into something hauntingly beautiful, echoes of former futures that continue to resonate in our present moment. As we navigate an increasingly ephemeral landscape, perhaps the most important lesson from these aesthetics is that impermanence itself can be meaningful. By acknowledging rather than denying the mortality of our technologies, we open up new possibilities for authentic expression in digital spaces, creating art that doesn't merely exist within technological constraints, but thoughtfully engages with them. The aesthetics of digital obsolescence ultimately remind us that in our quest for the perpetually new, we should not forget to honor what came before, not just as historical curiosity, but as vital parts of our ongoing cultural conversation about what it means to be human in a digital age. I've been Sublime Ghost. It was great having you on my channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Comment if I missed any old media that you love or your thoughts and opinions on this video. I'd love to hear them. I have many more aesthetic analysis type videos planned. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay sublime. Bye bye.